Before Dracula was a myth, he was a man. But the truth about him was worse than any fiction. Not a vampire, but a prince who fed on fear and ruled through pure terror. In 1897, Bram Stoker gave the world a monster with fangs and a cape, but even he never imagined the real inspiration would impale armies and drink beside the dead. Vlad the Impaler was born in 1431 in a land torn by blood and betrayal. His father swore loyalty to the Order of the Dragon, a secret oath to fight the enemies of Christendom. They called him Dracula the Dragon. His son, Vlad Dracula, son of the dragon. But the name would soon carry a new meaning. Not dragon, but demon. At just 13, Vlad and his brother were handed over as hostages to the Ottoman Empire. Not as guests, but as living leverage to keep their father's loyalty in check. Inside the Ottoman palace, Vlad learned cruelty masked as discipline. Whips replaced lessons. Betrayal replaced love. He survived by sharpening his mind and his hate. He watched prisoners flayed. Boys executed for a glance. Trust was suicide. Mercy was weakness. In the empire of fear, Vlad became a quiet master of silent revenge. Back home, his father and older brother were murdered by rival nobles. Vlad returned to a throne, soaked in betrayal, and he swore no one would ever control him again. He wasn't just back to rule, he was back to punish. And the first to feel it were the boyars who dined at his father's table and fed him to wolves when power shifted. He invited 200 nobles to a feast. They ate, laughed, then were seized. Old or young, none were spared. Vlad had them all impaled, their bodies twitching in sunrise light. But impalement wasn't execution. It was a performance. Vlad had learned from the Ottomans to rule by spectacle. And so, he turned death into art, and art into power. He built forests of corpses. Long, sharpened stakes pierced enemies from groin to mouth. Some screamed for hours, some for days. The message, fear me or join them. When Turkish envoys refused to remove their turbans, Vlad didn't argue. He had them nailed to their skulls so they'd wear them forever. Respect was no longer optional. His thirst wasn't for blood, but obedience. He used terror like currency. And soon, Wallachia was the safest kingdom in Europe, because no one dared break a single rule. A woman was found lying about how much bread she had. Vlad had her boiled alive and made her husband eat from her flesh. It wasn't justice, it was domination. But the West watched in silence. The Pope called him an ally against the Ottomans. He was cruel, but he was Christian. And cruelty, it seemed, could be forgiven. One morning, a Turkish army marched into Wallachia, but as they approached Targovishte, they saw 20,000 corpses, impaled in perfect military formation. Soldiers vomited, horses panicked. Their general said, "We cannot fight a man who does this." They turned back. Vlad didn't need to fight, only to horrify. He drank beside the dying. He dined among groans. And sometimes, they said, he dipped his bread in blood, not to become immortal, but to remind others they weren't. Legends grew. The devil walked among men. But it wasn't the devil. It was a man who had seen too much betrayal and decided fear was safer than faith. To his people, he was both monster and savior. Crime vanished. Roads became safe. But peace was not free. It was bought with pain and paid in blood. He rebuilt cities, enforced harsh laws, punished theft with impalement. No exceptions. Even a golden cup left in public went untouched because everyone feared the price. But enemies circled. Hungarian King Matthias Corvinus betrayed him, arresting Vlad on false charges. For 12 years, the Prince of Terror rotted in a dungeon. He wasn't broken, only sharpened. In that darkness, he dreamed of impaling, of screams, of taking back what was his. Not just a throne, but the fear that came with it. Released at last, he returned to Wallachia, older, colder, deadlier. His enemies expected a man weakened by time. Instead, they met something far worse. Vlad ruled again, but not for long. Surrounded by enemies, betrayed by allies, he rode into battle one final time, with fire in his eyes and death in his hands. He vanished in combat. Some say Turks killed him, others say his own boyars turned on him. What matters is what came after, not how he died, but what he became. They buried his body. Somewhere, or nowhere. No grave was ever confirmed, just rumors. And from those rumors, a legend began to rise from soil to shadow. In forests of Europe, whispers spread. A ruler who drank blood, who rose again at night, who ruled death itself. Bram Stoker would one day give him a name, Dracula. But the myth was softer than the man. Dracula was a horror tale. Vlad the Impaler was horror made flesh who turned mercy into ashes and fear into law. Dracula, the novel, made him immortal, but fiction gave him fangs. The real Vlad didn't bite necks, he crushed kingdoms. He didn't vanish in smoke, he ruled through it. Tourists search for his castle. Filmmakers chase shadows, but they miss the truth. Vlad's legacy isn't stone, it's fear, and it's still alive, buried in Eastern Earth. Historians argue, was he a hero, a tyrant, a necessary evil? But legends don't ask for permission. They crawl into your spine and stay there. The Ottomans feared his tactics. The church tolerated his cruelty. His own people whispered prayers when they spoke his name. Even in victory, he stood alone. He didn't want power. He wanted control. Not peace, but silence. Not love, but loyalty through terror. That's why he lasted. That's why he still haunts the world. In secret letters, nobles called him the Impaler Lord. In Turkish reports, Kazaklu Bey. In nightmares, just Vlad, the one who turned forests into screams. If he drank blood, it wasn't for magic. It was to prove the line between man and monster was thinner than bone, and he had crossed it willingly. The horror of Vlad the Impaler wasn't what he did. It was why he did it. His cruelty was methodical, precise. Not madness, but a system. A code of absolute fear. He proved something terrible. You don't need fangs to be feared. You don't need to rise from the grave. You just need to make the living wish they were dead. And in that, Dracula the monster was a mercy. The real Dracula, Vlad the Impaler, wasn't undead. He was alive, conscious, and deliberate. A man who chose to become legend. So, next time you hear Dracula, forget the cave, forget the castle. Remember the man who impaled thousands and ruled by terror. That was the true horror. That was real. He didn't live forever, but he made sure fear of his name did. His cruelty didn't die with him. It survived, in whispers, in nightmares, and in the stories we tell. Vlad the Impaler didn't become a monster. He built one, brick by brick, corpse by corpse, fear by fear, and then he stepped inside and never came back out. You just witnessed the untold truth behind Dracula. If this story shook, you subscribe now for more brutal history that dares to show what others only hint at. Who else deserves to have their darkest legacy revealed? Comment below. Suggest the next shadow in history, and your choice might be our next legend. We post new epic shorts every weekday. Battles, betrayals, secrets lost to time, and every Saturday, a full episode just like this one. History will never be the same. No AI, no filters, no sugarcoating. Just raw stories carved from time. If it happened, we tell it. If it hurts, we show it. If it echoes, we scream it louder. Fear didn't make Vlad. Vlad made fear. And he did it so well. We still feel it. 5 centuries later. That's not a legacy. That's a curse. This wasn't horror fiction. This was historical fact. This wasn't fantasy. It was flesh. And if you think you've seen darkness, you haven't met Vlad. He had no need for immortality. His story made him eternal. And now that you know the truth, you'll never hear Dracula the same way again.